15 minutes for presenting, okay, and 5 minutes for discussion and questions. We have appointments? Deixa eu pôr assim, mais para um. Dá? Eu acho que mostrar a vida. Okay. No.
So I was saying that this is a joint work with some colleagues from I'm from the School of Engineering, the Department of Production and Systems, and this is a joint work with some colleagues from the Department of Geography. In my presentation, I will start to talk about the project where this work was done, the framework of which this work was done. Then I will go into some general definition for location problems, and then address a case study that we have in our project, which is a region in Portugal, and use that case study to show how we can use this general methodology based on mixing programming to address this type of location problems. Talk a little bit first about the project O3F. O3F stands for an optimization framework to reduce forest fire. And what we are doing in this project, which is in the second year now, is to address decision making in the wildfire related problems. We have basically three types of problems. The first one is well, before the type of problems, we are developing a framework which the base of the framework is to be able to represent the fire spread in a landscape. So we have this type of tools of geographical information systems to represent the landscape, and then we convert the data related with geographical information to graphs. As you can see here, these are nodes of a graph. This is the same graph but with a bigger resolution. And we also have altitudes. You have land use of the landscape. And so what we do is, based on this information and on fire behavior models, what we are able to do with this base version of the framework is to simulate fire spread. But we are also addressing, and that's more interesting for us, the optimization related to optimization problems, namely firefighting problems and fire-aware forest management, and also location. In fact, location, this is the first. We are still a little bit late on the location part, so this is the first work that we are doing with location. The other two problems are a little bit more advanced. What kind of tools are we using? We use mainly network or graph representations of the landscape. We are using meteoristics. We are using fire behavior models for those that know a little bit about fire model. Typically, this is the way we represent fire progression within an ellipse. And these are projections related with the wind, and these are mixed integer programming for one of the problems that are not shown here. So we are using those kind of tools to address this type of problems within this framework that includes geographical information about geographical information useful for wildfire spread. These are the members of the project, past and current. We have 5 teams, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams. Good. The first one is the biggest is people working on optimization. We also have people working on fire behavior, people from the agronomy part of the project. Also, those are the co-authors of this work, Sara, Antonio, and Antonio Vieira. And we also have some people from statistics. Talking a little bit about the before the location, about the other problems. This is what we are doing. We are doing, based on the initial state of the fire, flows of the landscape, altitudes and wind direction and intensity. We are using graph theory mainly. We are obtaining this type of results. These are fire paths in the landscape. So the darker ones, it means that it has more fire paths. The darkest arcs have more fire paths, belong to more fire paths than the others. This is the time, the darkest nodes are the ones in which the fire arrived earlier. And here are isochronous curves that show the time. If a point is in the same line as the other one, it means that the fire arrived at the same time at those 2 points. I forgot to say that these are 2 ignitions, so we are assuming that when the first firefighter arrived at the place, then the fire situation was this one. There was an ignition here and an ignition here, and so our models are able to model multi-ignitions and represent the outputs as they are seen here. This can be seen as a multi-view in the plenary session. So we have the same information but with different views. And in fact, these are all graphs except the last one, which are curves, isochronous curves representing the same instance of time. This is well, this in fact is not an optimization problem yet, although it uses optimization because we are dealing with shortest paths here. The first optimization problem is firefighting or fire suppression problem. And here what we have is beside the network where the fire spreads, we also have a network where the resources can move. So this is a network of the roads of that region, and this is the network converted with a given resolution for a graph. And so each dot here, in this experiment, in each of these dots, each of these nodes, a resource can be placed, and the resources ideally can move between different nodes of this landscape graph. This is an example of a solution. The lines with color, the red until yellow, are again isochronous line. It means, and these are places where the resources are positioned, and this means that, for instance, the fire will never arrive at this part of the landscape because of the resources that were placed here. Then there are no more lines in that zone, so the fire will not pass through that part. On the contrary, here the fire will cross this because it will be able to. There is no resource here, so the fire will spread over there. And if you take a look, more deep look, analyze this better, this means that here there is a. Well, in this example, there is no position for the resources here, and there is because it's a mountain, and we don't have roads to reach that mountain. This is in different resolutions, so it's not the same thing. Okay, so this is the first optimization problem. We have the initial state of fire. In this case, the initial state of fire are these nodes. We have again the fuels, altitudes, and wind to model the fire spread. And we also have resources that we can characterize in different ways. I'm not going to detail the presentation is not about this. And we also may have different objectives as minimize the burn area or protect or maximize the arrival time of the fire at sensible points that must be protected as people, with people, and so on. And we have, as outputs, we have the same outputs as fire spread, but also outputs related with resources. The second optimization problem is related with forest management. In forest management problems, the idea is that you have a landscape divided in compartments or stands, and we want to define a prescription. So what to do in each of the stands. For instance, if you want to plant eucalyptus, or if you want to plant eucalyptus at a given year, or so on. So each stand has a set of potential prescriptions, and you want to select one. When you put fire on this, it means that we have to take into account that if I choose to have contiguous stands, where fire can be spread very quickly, then we'll have probably will have some problems in the future. So what we are doing here is first we optimize the mixed integer programming. We optimize the prescription for the stands, and then we simulate the potential fire according to the prescriptions that the optimized model gave. And we repeat that until there are no fire paths above a given threshold, And this is what this graph represents. More or less, if we give a fire path threshold as 8 kilometers per hour, it means that we do not accept any set of prescriptions that will lead to a fire path higher than 8 kilometers per hour. So when we decrease this, we have, this is the net present value, so how much we are with those prescriptions. And when we decrease this value, then we'll decrease the net present value. And starting in some 4 kilometers per hour, there are no feasible solutions for the existing prescriptions, so we must use some standard fire breaks. Okay, we will not use any prescription, we'll just cut down everything that is there, and it will be a fire break. Of course, this raises other questions, but this is not the moment to discuss them. Okay, so besides the net present value that is shown here, we also have other criteria that you may use. For instance, soil erosion, carbon stock, and biodiversity are the three more that make more sense in general when people think of forest management. So we can solve this problem, for instance, as maximizing the biodiversity, assuring that the net present value is not less than a given amount. Okay, going into location. The starting point of this part of my talk is more or less clear, is that when we are dealing with a landscape where we want to somehow reduce the fire spread or the fire potential, there are several problems that can be addressed as location problems. For instance, starting from in a more general way, a location problem, a discrete location problem, is when we want to decide from a set of candidate points which points to choose in order to satisfy some demand, and this is per general, and with these objectives, one or more, or some of them constrained. But in general, we want to minimize costs, maximize the coverage, or minimize the maximum distance. And we have to take into account that, for instance, we only have to open a given number of facilities. We must want to assure some demand levels, some satisfaction of demand levels, and we have other service constraints. In wildfire-related decision problems, there are many equipment that can be seen that we may want to locate in order to detect emissions as early as possible. For instance, this is a typical way of finding emissions early, is a vigilance tower, but we also have sensors, we also have cameras, and so on. We also may want to locate resources, for instance, in the morning, to know where to locate resources to, if an emission occurs, they will arrive earlier. And the third reason is that, and it's more important here because the motivation for this is to use drones to assess if an emission is real or not. Sometimes, for instance, for some smoke in a place, it is not very useful if you send there 5 firefighters only to see if the smoke is from a fire or not. And so what we may use is to use a drone to go there and assess the situation of the potential fire emission state. More than this, we are interested in network design and in the combination of both. But in this work, I'll only focus on network location advisors. This is our case study. So we are dealing with the region of Baião, which is in the northern part of Portugal, with 12 kilometers by 17. And we asked for our colleagues from geography asked the entities there where some potential bases could be set, and they answered with some of them. And they also studied the market for different types of drones. So we have 3 types of drones, each one with a given value and a given range. And our base problem is, more than that, we also have potential emission points. So in this figure, what you can see is each point is a potential ignition point. There are some of them that are not potential ignitions because it's urban areas or water or something that is not burnable. And we also obtain the fire rate of spread from our model, the fire spread that I showed you before. For each of these points, we know that if the fire arrives there or starts there, how will be its rate of spread, its velocity, depending on the wind. This is our first model for this location problem, where we consider, so we have three types of drones, each one with a cost and a range, and we want to minimize the money that we spend with buying the drones. At the same time, we want to maximize the coverage. So that's it. And we have a model that is based on these decision variables, which is a very classic model for location problems. So xj is equal to 1 if demand point j is covered, and yka is equal to 1 if element k is located at point I. And this set of constraints, or this model, has two objectives. The first one is to minimize the cost, as I told you before, and the second one is to maximize the coverage. And we only have one type of constraints that state that in order to have a point covered, then I have to have a resource in a node that covers that demand point. So minimize the cost forces this constraint to go this way and maximize the coverage to go this way. It's a very elegant method. What we did was for we use the epsilon constraint method, so we consider the budget, the budget objective, the cost objective as a constraint, and we varied that constraint for different values of the available budget, the epsilon, and if we do that, we get the efficient frontier, and this is better than weight methods or something based on weights, because it also includes in the efficient frontier, it also includes the non-supported solutions, and this is the efficient, for this case, small case study, this is the efficient frontier. So we have for each budget the coverage, and when we increase the budget from 0 to 30, the coverage is also increasing. So with 30,000 euros, we can totally cover the region. But this, as in multi-criteria problems, it will depend on the judgment of the decision maker which solution you will be choose. But these are the ones that are rational to be chosen. And we can see in some of these points there are big jumps. For instance, with 5,000 more or less. Yeah. With 4,000 we already, with 4,000 euros we already can cover almost 90% of the region. These are just some representations of these solutions. The potential locations are these the 6 crosses, and each drum has a different color, and we can see here some of them. What we decided after these results was that, in particular, for when the coverage is 100%, it would make sense. Not all. It would be good to take into account that it's better to have a double coverage of having a single one, and that it's useful. For instance, in emergency services, this is an important issue, because if you have only one resource, then if it gets busy, then if another ignition occurs, it will be not covered, and that happens sometimes in Portugal with some catastrophic consequences in the past. What we decided was to to use a lexicographic optimization method or approach. We still, our first objective still is maximize coverage, but then we have maximize double coverage. And the third one is to minimize the maximum fire rate of spread of points that are not covered. And well, optimizing this in the lexicographical ways. In the second objective, we had another mixed indigenous programming model where there are decision variables to represent if a point is covered twice or not, which are the double D. And we have to fix, after solving the first problem that I showed you before, we have to fix this, the first objective in a constant value, the optimal value of the previous MIP, and then optimize this. And the third one takes into account the rate of the fire rate of spread. But the principle is the same, except that now we have to consider that we want to minimize the maximum fire rate of spread. Uncovered, these are the uncovered points, and this is the maximum rate of spread. Here we can see what happens when we do this lexicographic optimization. In the yellow values are just the values of the single objective function, just maximize coverage, maximize single coverage. But of course, if we have a solution for that problem, we can measure the number of double coverage points that are double coverage. And these are the yellow ones. For instance, for 10,000 euros, we get 90-something single coverage, and the yellow value here is 75%, more or less. Okay. If we use the lexicographical optimization and explicitly maximize the double coverage, what happens is these orange values, and we can see that in some situations it really makes a difference, almost 50% more or less here, that we increase the double coverage from not thinking about it when optimizing to use lexicographic optimization and consider it as a value.
Okay, you can compare the before. Compare the lexicographic with the Epson complaint. Do you have the comparison? Okay.
It's the yellow and the orange. The yellow and the orange. The yellow was the maximum coverage before, and with the lexicographic, it's the orange. These are again some solutions, and jumping to the conclusions, we have, although we apply this on a small case study, the idea is that this is a general approach based on mixed integer programming for location problems. Our idea is to focus more on wildfire problems. Here we just use the fire rate of spread. And we are really interested in the next extension, which is combining location and network design. We already have some stuff, but not yet as good as we like.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Philip is very enthusiastic with this project, and I asked to stop, not to stop, but I want to know these results. This one, you jumped. So what are you comparing here?
It's not really interesting, but
no?
I can show.
It's not interesting?
Here what I'm comparing is, if I forget that the first objective is the single coverage, and I will maximize the double coverage.
Okay.
Okay, so this orange now is the first objective function. And what happens is that we have to see the previous one too.
Okay.
But it doesn't. It was just
not interesting.
Not interesting because the first objective should be maximize the coverage. It doesn't make sense to maximize the double coverage and then the single one.
So thank you, Philip. for your presentation. I think we clap. No, okay. And anyone who can have any question or any remark? We are run out of time. Thank you, Filipe.
We have to check also the virtual room.
Okay.
If there are any questions.
Okay. The next one is me. I am the next one. I will present inside of this project. I will present the resource dispatch optimization for firefighting based on genetic algorithm. So this is the leader of the project based on wildfires, and I also belong to the project. So we are making some optimization also, but for detecting, for assigning the resources. Okay, so this is joint work with Filipe Lino Costa, and this is a work of. Sorry. This is a work with Marina Matos, that is a PhD student that is here. Okay. Okay. First, I will start with a small introduction to the problem, but Filipe also he said lots of things about this one, so I don't have to say too much. So you already understand what is the problem. So I will show a resource, the resource dispatch problem. Sorry, I will not use this. So the resource dispatch problem and the genetic algorithm will be the algorithm to solve that problem. Some experiments and finally some conclusions. So the wildfires are increasing over the years. So this is a great problem. Usually, or they are caused by natural causes or intentional. Okay, the optimization area is increasing to improve. Is an increasing area that now is improving, is helping assessing the decision making for combating forest fires. So this is the fire suppression that we already heard something, so it's crucial for the safety and protection of people, property, and the environment. So we should implement suppression strategies to minimize the risk. So here, what we want to do is to minimize the total burned area, that will be denoted by TDA, to extinguish when extinguishing the forest fire ignition. So we have some ignitions that we want to extinguish, and we will decide which resources should go to each ignition and when, in order to minimize the total burned area. So to do this, we will optimize the resource dispatching problem, and we will use the genetic algorithm to solve it. So the goals in the resource dispatch problem, as I said before, is to select the resources that should go to fight an ignition and extinguish it. And when we fight the ignition, we should fight the ignition as quickly as possible, and in order to obtain the smallest burned area. Some assumptions were considered, some assumptions related to ignition, and some others related to the resources. For instance, related to the ignition, each ignition can only be extinguished once. Each ignition can be extinguished by one or more resources. And for resource assumptions, for instance, all resources of resources in the initial instant of time are in the base and have full tank water capacity. The tank water capacity, when the resource is run out of water, it cannot be refilled. And each resource can only be assigned to one ignition at each instant of time. So this is the genetic algorithm. We start with an initialization of the problem of some parameters, and then we have also the fitness function to evaluate the objective function, some operators that belong to the genetic algorithm, the crossover, mutation, and selection, and then a termination criterion to stop the algorithm. We also use the genetic algorithm from the PyMEO framework, and also to use this in this problem, we needed to make a permutation representation. Here is an example of a permutation representation when we have 3 resources to assign to 4 ignitions. So this is the chromosome size, and the chromosome size is the number of resources times the number of ignitions, and the chromosome gives us the ignitions order. So each chromosome is a sequence of integer values that can only appear once, and this indicates the order of action of each resource. So resource 1 will act will be assigned to ignition 2, resource 2 at ignition 1, and resource 3 to ignition 3 at the first instant of time, and so on. So here in this work, I will present some experiments with the GA, and where the objective function is to minimize the total burns area, and some statistical analysis will be implemented to test the most suitable GA operators. So this is a problem data that we invented. So we defined 7 resources to be assigned to 20 ignitions. We have the capacity of each of the resources. We define the capacity based on the information about our firefighters. Tank water of firefighters. The burned area, so for each ignition and for each instant of time, we have the burned area that varies over the time. We also have the travel times between ignitions and base, and for each ignition, and also we have the water required to extinguish each ignition, and it varies over the time also. We use the default values for the stopping criteria of the genetic algorithm, and the population size used was 20, and we did 30 runs since the genetic algorithm is a stochastic method. So the strategy here to test the GA operators was first test the crossover operator, keeping the default selection and mutation. So these are the default selection and mutation, and then we detect the most suitable crossover operator. Then with that crossover, we test the mutation, and also even we maintain the tournament selection. And in the end, for the crossover and mutation operator that obtains the best result, we test the selection operator. These are the results for each of the crossover, okay? And maintaining this selection, maintaining this mutation, then the results when we use this crossover for other mutation and for other type of selection. In bold, we can see here is the best result obtained. So for a total burned area of this value, we use remain water, and this is the standard deviation, number of function evaluations, and the processing time in average. So when we were making these, collecting these results, we did a pairwise pair T-student test to test the existence of significant differences between means. So when we were testing the crossover operators, we obtained the results in that table.
5 minutes.
Okay. 15, so
5.
5, 12,
2.
12, 15.
Yes.
Okay, the statistic analysis. So when we were testing the crossover in the upper triangular part of the table, we have the difference between the TBA values, and on the lower triangular metrics, we have the p-values. So here we concluded that the exponential crossover was the most suitable. Then, maintaining the exponential crossover, we tested the notation, the notation operator, and we concluded that the polynomial notation was the most suitable one, and then testing the selection operator, and we conclude that the tournament selection was the most suitable selection operator. This is the best solution obtained with the operators, the best, so the most suitable operators. So here are the values of the best solution, and here is the, for each resource, in which time it will go to each ignition. So, for instance, the resource A, first is in the basis, then in instant 10 it is traveling to ignition 4. When it is in ignition 4, ignition is extinguished automatically in this time, and then it goes to in the instant 32 ignition 19. Okay. And so on for other resources. So we in this solution, all the ignitions are extinguished in the maximum 55 or 50 instants of time, 5 instants of time. So, in conclusion, we proved that GA is effective and efficient in solving the resource dispatch problem for firefighting. In the future, we want to use a multi-objective approach to optimize not only the TBA, the total burn area, but other measures. For instance, the water, when thinking in sustainability. And we also want to use optimize using real data, and also we want to integrate this in the framework that my colleague told in the last presentation. Thank you. I don't know if we have time for questions, but if anyone wants to. But she said, I only took.
No, you start.
Yeah, you recover 10 minutes.
Yeah.
10 minutes?
Yes, which is good.
I don't understand.
So I
But
have
it's
a question that
also
is also
15
valid
minutes.
for Philippe.
It only rests 2 minutes to you to end.
To end to the 20, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone?
Yes, one
Any
question that is valid also for Philippe. I had the idea that you implemented this in Python. Is that true?
Yes.
Why Python?
Why?
Everybody,
Why not?
Why not?
Why not?
Everybody implements now in Python.
I think Python is an open source. It's free. It's free. We are using the PyNPO. It's a framework free. Okay. And Philip is implementing in Python also because Python is the language of the moment. Because
The difference between I code it in C++ for 20 years. So I changed. And the main reason is that because it's higher level, you can do things that are less efficient, but you can do much more complex things. Okay. For instance, that network stuff, it's very difficult to do in other languages, and in Python it's very easy for you to have some.
And they already have some packages.
Some Python, and also for you, it's also simple, much simpler if you want to have a bigger, not a simple function or so. For the bigger project, it's much easier to do complex stuff.
I have to learn Python.
Hmm?
I have to learn Python.
Yes, it is, the data is certain also.
I have another question. I'm fan of MATLAB. Okay, that is optimization. Yeah, I know it. So you covered also the aspect of timing. So you have the instant to 10, instant 20, and so on. But if you can come back to the slide where the how can you determine the amount of time that occurs between the location of the emission 4 and the location of emission 19, for example, in case of A?
So I showed before some tables. For instance, here we have a table time between ignition 4 to ignition 19. We have 10 minutes to go from one ignition to another. So we have this table, and it takes from ignition 4 to ignition 19. So it takes 10 minutes. So that's why here we are in ignition 4, and then 10 minutes we can go from this. And when we are in the base to go to ignition 4, for instance, we are in the base to go to ignition 4, we need 20 minutes. So 2 instances of time.
So those measures are expressed as constraints to the optimization problem, or how they have been expressed? Because usually when you consider time, because I usually use a genetic algorithm in the context of antenna, base station, transmission, and so on. But the point is that when I involve time in the computation, it's difficult to me to maintain the constraints. So because, for example, here you have a constraint of 20 minutes from the point 1 to 2. But how can you express these metrics to the algorithm?
In GA? In GA?
In the genetic algorithm.
Yes. I think, because I'm not a programmer, okay, I program MATLAB also. I think we assign, when we test that that resource needs to be traveling, we say he is traveling in this instant of time. So we make a program, okay, and for each instant of time, each resource is doing something. So when he is in that case, he is traveling, so we cannot be assigned. He is already assigned, but now he is traveling. I don't know if I explained.
Yes, no, but the point is that usually, in my case, for example, it's difficult to to make the solution to converge to the solution, because usually I have a lot of local minima where I move, and it's difficult to involve also the time, because when I involve the time, usually I have a best solution and then another solution that is completely different from the previous. And so okay.
But we can calculate it.
Yeah.
After the session.
Correct.
If we have time.
If we have time. Okay. So, thank you very much. Next speaker. Humberto Costa. Comparison of hybrid GIS search approaches for V-manual optimization in intensity modulated proton therapy.
Okay, so I will skip the title.
Maybe.
I
No,
cannot,
no,
no, I cannot put the
That's fine.
presentation mode because.
That's fine. I think everybody can see it. In the morning, Isabel, were you able to put in full screen?
Yes. No, because you don't have the license. That's the problem. When I put it, I'll show you.
Maybe you can activate?
No, we don't have the.
It doesn't work the official office.
Okay, that's fine.
And if we do
No.
full
But
screen,
you can convert in PDF.
No, that way you can see what's going next. It's fine. Okay, so this is a joint work with the College of Anadias, and I will present an hybrid approach for direct search methods to optimize this demand optimization problem in radiotherapy. So the outline is the following. Never mind.
No.
No, that's fine. That's fine. More than fine. So the outline is the following. I'll start by motivating why we update our algorithms. Then I will briefly describe the problem we aim to address. Then I will describe deterministic and probabilistic direct search methods that we used in the past. And we'll explain the now proposed hybrid approach. I'll present some computational results and conclusions. So the motivation comes from a best paper award given to Graton and colleagues from an optimization journal. And in this paper, the authors show numerically that considering random directions to explore a search space is competitive with the traditional approach with deterministic characteristics. And the main thing is that considering a reduced number of polling directions or search directions, if you want, we also obtain quality results, but with much improved computational time. And this is very appealing, not only for this problem, but for any problem, but in particular for the problems we want to address, because computational time is an issue. So the problem we want to address is the optimization of intensity modulated proton therapy treatment planning. And this is a modern type of radiation therapy that we don't have still in Portugal. There are a few countries in Europe that already use protons. In Portugal, it's planned to have a facility in Lisbon in the next few years. I hope it's before we have a new airport, otherwise we will not have a facility. Anyway, the goal of these treatments are exactly the same as the conventional ones, is to kill the cancer cells and at the same time spare the healthy tissues surrounding the tumor. And the delivery of the radiation is very similar. And the patient is immobilized on a couch that can rotate. This is the couch. And radiation beams are delivered by a gantry that rotates around the couch of the patient. If the couch is fixed at 0 degrees, we only have incident beams in a plane. So we have coplanar treatments. Here we will address a more complex case where the couch can move. So we have no coplanar beams and we can irradiate the patient from almost any angle. So what's the advantage of protons instead of photons? And here in this figure we have an illustration. And we can see that the main advantage is to take those characteristics of this type of beams. We see that we have a low entrance dose, and then suddenly we have a sharp peak. It's called a bragg peak. And then we have almost no dose after the peak. And we can see that if we are able to place all these peaks inside the tumor, the trade-off between tumor irradiation and organ sparing can be much easier compared to the traditional one, where we have a high entrance dose and then the dose decays linearly. Here we have, in the left-hand side, a photon beam or a beam with photons, and in the right-hand side, a beam with protons, and we can see the differences. We have high energy in the entrance for photons, and then those decays until the tumor and continue. But for protons, we have a low energy before the tumor, a high energy in the tumor, or a high dose, and almost no dose after the tumor. Regardless of these interesting characteristics, in order to obtain high quality treatment plans with protons, we need to optimize a number of parameters. And one of the parameters is from which direction should we irradiate the tumor. And that's the focus of this presentation. There are different problems that arise in treatment planning, and this is one of the most difficult. And it's the selection of the best beam irradiations. We will consider non-popular directions, meaning that the couch can move. And with that, each direction has two parameters, the couch angle and the gantry angle. And in order to compare two beam angle sets, we need a measure or a function. And typically, the measure considered is the optimal value of the fluence map optimization problem. This is another problem that arises in this treatment planning optimization. And it's a very large scale problem, and it's not very difficult to solve. And here, to simplify, we can consider this problem as a black box, because this will be given by free. Hopefully, everything is okay. And also, in order to generalize this approach for other problems, we will consider here in this presentation this problem as a black box problem, but an expensive one in terms of computational time, because for a given beam angle set, it requires roughly 5 minutes to obtain a solution for that beam angle set. So, we have been using this direct search algorithm for some time for photons, not for protons. And at each iteration, we try to improve the computational efficiency of these methods by introducing some smart thing in some part of the algorithm. But here, computational time is even more important, because for protons, we have a large degree of freedom given by different levels of energy. And we also have different scenarios for a robust optimization. So we really need to improve the computational time. And I will just briefly describe the direct search framework. And typically, directional direct search are derivative-free optimization algorithms, meaning that they do not use derivatives. Most of the times, using derivatives is good, because we can move quickly to the best solutions. But for this particular problem, it's a highly non-convex problem, multimodal with many local minima, using derivatives, even if they were available, and we can always compute derivatives numerically. It's not a very good idea because of local internal. So using derivative-free optimization like these methods has been a good solution. And these methods use the notions of positive basis directions. What is a positive basis? For the one that have linear algebra, a positive basis is almost like a basis. It's a set of vectors that span the entire search space, and the only difference here is that the scalars are positive. Here we have an illustration of two positive bases. And we can show that a positive basis for a search space of dimension n has at least n plus 1 directions and at most 2n. The first is called minimal base, and the later is called maximal base. Here we have an illustration of a minimal basis for a 2D space, and here a minimal basis for a 3D space. So what's the interest of using the directions of positive bases to explore the search space? And the interest is the following. Given any vector, I can always find a vector of a positive basis that forms an acute angle with that vector. In particular, if that vector is the gradient vector that I don't know, I can always find a vector of a positive basis that forms an acute angle with the gradient vector. And we can show that following that direction, we end up by improving or decreasing the objective function value. So that's the main reason for using these directions to explore a search space. This is the traditional or simple direct search algorithms, and direct search algorithms are typically organized in 2 steps. In the first step, called search step, I can use any strategy or heuristic, a priori knowledge of the problem, whatever. So we can use creativity to introduce here and speed up the process and give a global aspect to the algorithm. This step can also be optional or empty, and in this work we will consider this step empty. And we will only consider the poll step because we are interested in comparing the use of different sets of poll directions. So the poll step is used when the first step, the third step, fails to improve the current best iterate, or when the first step is empty, which is the case, and uses stricter rules to improve the best solution. When the set of poll directions contain a positive basis, we have a deterministic directional direct search, meaning that we have the guarantee of finding stationary points. But, and we will test two different positive bases, one with n+1 directions, which is one minimal basis, and one with two n directions, which is maximal basis. We have been doing this for some time, so the results of these two should be good. But if we have a large space, a large n, and particularly knowing that our objective function is expensive, this can take some computational time. So computational time for these methods is a burden. So that's the main motivation for using a set of directions, of poll directions, that does not necessarily contain a positive basis. In particular, using a reduced number of directions to explore the search space, and with that improved computational time. And this is based on what was proposed in the best paper award. So we will test 2n directions, 2n random directions, n+1 directions, n divided by 2, 2 and 2 symmetric. 2 symmetric is one random direction and the opposite. And why? Because they say it's good. So we are following their ideas. And we test independent random vectors uniformly distributed on the unit sphere exactly as they state in that. So due to the random behavior of this approach, we need to run this more than time, because every time we run this, it's a different result. So we run this 20 times. And the preliminary results were not so interesting because the objective function span over a wide interval, meaning that we obtain very good results, but some poor results. And that can be very interesting for some approaches, but for a clinical setting, it's not interesting at all, because we can only run this once, and we cannot afford to obtain a poor solution. So this motivated the current work. Instead of using positive bases or alternatively a reduced number of random directions, we will use sometimes positive basis directions and sometimes a reduced number of polling directions, using what we already knew. This is from a previous work, and these are the results for 4 complex cases of head and neck cancer cases. And we use in this previous work maximal positive basis. And we can see that most of the improvement of the objective function is obtained in the first iterations. And then it takes a long time to converge with a few improvements in the objective function. So the idea is to use in the first iterations a positive basis, and then in the final iterations, reduce number of random directions to accelerate convergence. And we call that an hybrid approach 2n because we initially, in the first iteration, we used 2n directions, and then in the latest iterations, we use 2 directions. Since we are using this, we decided to test the opposite approach that starts with 2 directions, 2 random directions, and ends with 2n directions. It doesn't make much sense in terms of numerical results, but in order to publish, we also need to think in terms of convergence, and ending with 2n directions, it was good because meaning that can be proved to converge to some stationary point, even if it's a poor one. So we also test this one, and we test this in a head and neck cancer case considering 5 directions, Note that it's non-coplanar direction, so each direction has two parameters, the couch and the gantry angles. So we are optimizing in a 10-dimensional search space, and we use MATRAD. MATRAD is an open source treatment planning system, mainly for research, and we can introduce our prescription here and introduce our beam directions and click here in optimize, and 5 minutes later we have our optimal fluence map optimization. So this is our black box of our function. And this beam configuration, all the couch angles are 0, so it's a coplanar one, and the gantry angles are evenly spread, so it's a coplanar equispace beam angle solution, typically used in clinical practice because they don't have algorithms in their softwares to optimize the directions. So we will use this configuration as clinical benchmark for this particular case. By the way, this is one case that was given by the Portuguese Institute of Ecology for us to test their results against ours. So in the left-hand side now, we have the results in terms of fluence map optimization, or if you want, in terms of optimal function value. And in the right-hand side, we have the results in terms of computational time. Looking first to the optimal values obtained, we can see that compared to the clinical benchmark, the deterministic approach with the maximal value is very good. It's not new, we already tested it, and the improvement is more than 20%. It's a very good result. However, when we look to the computational time, we see that's the approach that takes more time. The deterministic with the minimal basis is also good, but it's not so good. But it's way better in terms of computational time. Looking at the probabilistic approach, it's called uniform because we are using uniform directions. Looking at these approaches, we can see that unlike they reported in their paper, when we decrease the number of calling directions or directions to explore such space, the results deteriorate. They do not keep the same quality. Furthermore, we can see that for the probabilistic approach, we have a wide range of objective function, meaning that we have very good results and poor results. And that's an issue for real-world problems, particularly for healthcare problems. Looking to our first proposed approach for this work, our hybrid approach obtained very consistent results, and the final result is somewhere between the deterministic with a maximal base and the minimal base. So it's a very competitive result. And when we look to the computational time is somewhere between these two. So we obtain a good result and a good computational time. And it's quite competitive with the deterministic approach. When looking at the computational time for the random approaches, particularly when using a reduced number of polling directions, we see that there's a huge gap of computational time between these approaches and the deterministic approach with the maximal base. It's more than 10 times, or if you want, it's less than 10 times. So we can think of using this computational time to do something smart. We didn't do that, nothing very smart, but we tried the following. We run 10 times the approaches with two random directions, considering the best point from the previous iteration. So running 10 times the random approaches, we can see that computational time improves, but still it's not very competitive with the deterministic approach or even with the hybrid approach, particularly if we look at the span of the objective function, and it is still a wide span, meaning that we have good results and poor results. In terms of computational time, obviously, the results are pretty less. So in conclusion, for this case, we test the results are not in line with the reported in that paper, and clearly the results deteriorate when we decrease the number of polling directions. And we need to take care in real-world problems because most of the time we are not interested in the best one, but in the worst case scenario, and particularly for a clinical setting, that's very important. And the proposed deterministic probabilistic approach here is very competitive, both in terms of quality and computational time. In future, and I say ongoing, actually, it's stopped, but in future work, we will try to test this in a set of benchmark optimization problems to see if this holds in general or only for this particular problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Still have time. 1 minute for one question. Okay.
If any.
If any questions, yes.
How general is it? It is good for combinatorial optimization?
No, it's for continuous. Actually, I consider all possible angles around the patient. I show a figure that can give the idea that it's a discrete set of directions, but actually we optimize the entire space in a continuous manner, and in the end we obtain discrete direction. Okay. So it's a good method for continuous optimization.
Any more questions?
Which is more simple than combinatorial.
So it seems that when you show the both figures, it seems that you should make a bio-objective approach, but no, because it could minimize the function and the time. But the time is not the.
Yes, but that's yeah. I wish we could optimize.
Yes.
That's our goal, but
Yes.
not included in the optimization.
Yes, but it is not. It is not possible. So thanks again. We are very late, so the next session, next speaker is Lino Costa. He'll show his work.
Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, I am Lino Costa. Okay, sorry. Okay, I'm Lino Costa, and I'm from the ICCSA Center, the University of Minho in Portugal. And this is a joint work with Francisco Santos and Emil Varela. Francisco Santos is a PhD student that is supervised by us. So this work is about the multi-objective optimization of the job scheduling problem. In particular, we consider unrelated parallel machines or job shop scheduling problems with unrelated parallel machines and sequence dependence at the times. Okay, this is the outline of my presentation. I will start by introducing this subject. And I will talk briefly about the single and multi-objective optimization, the optimization of which we have used. Then I will describe the problem and some details of the algorithms we have implemented and parameters. Finally, I will present some results on the single objective formulation and multi-objective formulation of this problem. Finally, I will address some conclusions and future work. So, what is the motivation of this work? These problems, job shop scanning problems, are very frequent and are important in the industrial engineering area. And moreover, these problems involve, in general, several conflicting objectives. I give here some examples. Span, the average job completion time, tardiness, energy consumption, and among other objectives. In general, these problems are solved as single objective problems, um, often considering, for instance, the make span. And it is important to explore approaches that take into consideration all some of these objects at least. This is a preliminary work. We have solved some instances of the job shop scanning problem. And the objective is to assess the performance of the object in these problems, in particular when we consider multi-objective formulations. Okay? We consider several objectives. Okay, I will not describe this because I think this is well known, but I will just remark that when we solve multi-objective optimization problems, we have several computing objectives. We are interested in finding the set of Pareto optimal solutions that define in the objective space that is multi-dimensional. In this case, I'm just representing two objectives here. So we want to find solutions that form this Pareto optimal front. So solutions are compared in terms of domination. And I just recall this definition because, in general, some materialistics use this notion of dominance to guide search. So that is to obtain Pareto optimal set, and of course that the extremes of the Pareto optimal front correspond to the optimum, or to the optima of the objectives when solved, or when we optimize the objectives sparingly. So I will show that after in this presentation. Okay, let's see if I. Okay. The algorithms we have used are based on genetic algorithms. So these algorithms are population based, and we have several chromosomes in population. Each chromosome represents a potential solution, and then we have some mechanisms or some operators that allow to guide search towards the optimum. In terms of the results I will present, we have used these well-known genetic algorithms for multi-objective optimization, that is the NSGA2, okay, that is based, the search is based on the dominance sorting. As I said before, the idea is to rank better the solutions that are non-dominate. So solutions in population are ranked according to the dominance definition or the dominance relation. And this algorithm also uses some mechanism to assure diversity in the population and the diversity in the final approximation to the Pareto optimal front. So solutions in that are in crowded regions of the objective space have a less rank than the others. So this is the idea of this algorithm. So this is a very well known algorithm. So I will skip the details. Okay. Okay. The problem we are solving is that one. So we have a set of unrelated machines, and we want to assign a set of independent jobs to machines. We are considering that we have different processing times for each machine, for each job, and we have also different setup times that depend on the previous job we have assigned. So the idea is that in general, we can define different objectives for this problem, and the objectives in general are based on compilation time, for instance, as I can show you in the next slide. So, the idea is to obtain the feasible sequence of jobs that are assigned to machines. We can consider that this sequence can be divided in different subsequences, each one for each machine. And the idea, as I said before, if we want, for instance, to minimize the make span, we have just to compute these population times and then select the maximum population time. However, there are other objectives that depend on the population times of the machines. Okay, so in this work we start with, I will say, the simplest objective, the make span, as I said before, correspond to the maximum population time, and we also consider the average population time. We have start by optimizing these two objectives separately. Okay, this is a single objective, a traditional single objective approach, and then we consider also the multi-objective formulation, in which we want to minimize simultaneously the two objectives. Okay, so we consider 15 instances for each combination of n and n, so the number of machines and the number of jobs. For this instance, all these instances have balanced processing and setup times, and we have used these algorithms implemented in Python in order to solve this particular problem. We used a permutation presentation with chromosomes of size n plus n minus 1. So in this chromosome, genes that are superior to the number of jobs separated subsequences. These are the operators we have used: dominant selection, order-based crossover, inversion mutation, stop criterion. We test several different population sizes. I will present here some results for 20 and 40 population size for the genetic algorithm, so for the single objective approach. And we have adopted a population size of 40 chromosomes for the multi-objective problem. These algorithms are stochastic, so we have performed 30 independent runs, and then we analyze the results statistically using the one-tailed paired t-student tests. These are some results. In these tables, we have the results for the two objectives optimized separately. And in these tables, we have for different combinations of number of machines and number of jobs, we have the results in terms of the average and standard deviation for the make span with the population size of 40 chromosomes and the population size of 20 chromosomes. We can say that we can see that we have some difference in terms of the average, and for all these differences are statistically significant. We can see here that the p-value is inferior to 5%, or considered 5%, and this means that okay, the population size 40 allows to reduce significantly the average values of the main span for all dimensions of the problem. The same occurs for the average population time. Okay, the results are very similar, so I will present next table or next an example. So this is an example of a small example with n equal to 2 and n equal to 6. Here this is the data for this problem, for this instance, the processing times and setup times for each machine. And this is the optimal solution for this problem. Here in this representation, we are presenting these values here are the setup times, and the processing times are represented below the corresponding job. So the optimal solution in this case corresponds to these two subsequences. The objective function value is 399, as you can see when you consider or when you compute the two compilation types. When we minimize the average compilation time, the solution is very different. No job is assigned to machine 1, and all jobs are in the machine 2. These setup times correspond, the order corresponds to the order that allows to minimize the setup times. So I think this solution can be understood. Sorry, and this is the objective function value. In order to assess the relative improvement on the objective function when we use a larger population, we define this measure delta that can be computed for any statistics. In this table, we indicate this metric computes for the best solution, that is here denoted by delta mean, and for the average solution. We can see that for the best solution, no significant difference were obtained, but for the delta mean, for the average solutions, all the differences are significant. The results are very similar for the other objective. However, for these two particular combinations, we have obtained also significant differences. The multi-objective approach allows to obtain in a single run all these solutions. As I said before, these are the extreme solutions. In general, the decision maker can choose a trade-off that correspond to this solution. This is the presentation of this solution. I will skip that. We have also measured the performance of the algorithm in terms of the hypervolume indicator that measures both conscious and diversity with this reference point. All values standardized in the unitary space, and I would say that I must say that the higher hypervolume corresponds to a better performance. These are the results. When we compare this column here, that are the results for the best hypervolume, so the hypervolume of the best approximation to Pareto from, when we compare with this reference hypervolume, we can see, we can observe that these values are superior to these ones. So these highlights the importance or the advantage of using the multi-objective approach. As conclusions, I would like to summarize some conclusions here. Of course, that for these instances, and this is a preliminary work, for small populations can compromise the performance of the algorithms. This is very clear, even in small instances, and single object optimization problems. And of course, the multi-objective approach has some advantage in terms of facilitating the decision-making process. As future work, we intend to solve more complex problems, test the performance of other algorithms, and in particular, this is what we are doing or doing now, that is to extend this approach to the distributed shops problem with several facilities, several factories. So this is the idea. Okay. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Lino, but we have to continue to the next.
Okay.
No time for questions. We can thank again. Okay. Now we will have a virtual Telmo Pinto with present. You have 15 minutes.
Okay.
Please use only the 15 because we have another session for
5:30.
Yes, at 5:30, and it is not here.
Okay. Are you seeing well in the presentation?
You can start, tell me.
Thank you so much. So thank you for your presence. It's a pleasure to virtual be with you. My presentation is a joint work that represents a study conducted by Ana Rita Martins, Cláudio Alves, and I, aiming to address the challenges faced in personal scheduling. I will start by a brief introduction where I will provide an overview on the personal scheduling problems. After that, I will show an overview of the state of the art in this area. And next, I will dive into the problem's description, its significance, and the potential impact of these approaches. To tackle this problem, we have developed a mathematical programming model, and finally, I will show some experiments we conducted to validate our model and some conclusions and future work. Well, why it is important to study personal scaling problems? Firstly, it helps in reducing labor costs by efficiently allocating and managing the workforce. Secondly, it aims to satisfy the employees by creating schedules that are considering their preferences and needs, mainly their preferences. And thirdly, it helps in try to reduce the time spent in developing a schedule like this and automating this process and using some optimization techniques. Um, it is important to effectively to uh, to know that effective personal scheduling can significantly increase profitability and overall operational effectiveness. So, additionally, call centers play a crucial role in customer acquisition and retention for businesses. We are all our customers, and we all can see that a call center serves as our primary point of contact, handling inquiries, resolving some issues, providing support, and so on. So the aim of this research is to develop an exact solution method to solve personal scheduling problems more precisely at call centers. The focus is on try to reduce the time spending in scheduling this process. In person scheduling, shifts and days off are assigned to works to ensure a proper line of work distribution. We have some key considerations that include personal characteristics, decision delineation, shift definition, and so on. And we have to measure all with to mix all with constraints on performance metrics and flexibility that plays crucial roles involving soft and hard constraints in different kind of objective functions. In terms of solution methods, they are ranging from mathematical programming, the exact ones, the optimal solution that we achieve with them, to meteoristics, and sometimes we mix them within hybrid approaches that we also use. Uncertainty factors are also considering this kind of research, which has, in the last point, a lot of applicability in the healthcare, emergencies, and of course, call centers. In the literature, you can see that call centers are seen as a vital communication channel for companies, as they play a crucial role in customer acquisition and also retention. They consist in significant they consist of a significant portion of the cost of the operational costs. However, it is not simple to solve this kind of problem. Usually, staff scheduling is typically divided in two phases that I used to call assigning first, scheduling second. In these two phases that I present in the final of this slide. In terms of problems description. This call center operates 24 times 7 within a week to provide a continuous service to customers. The shifts in this call center uses a model of 48 shifts per day, so intervals of 30 minutes, each one starting in each 30 minutes. Because this level of granularity enables precise scheduling and optimization of staff levels throughout the day. Each shift lasts for 9 hours, and here we consider a planning horizon of 1 month divided into time periods of 30 minutes. This allows for long-term scaling and research allocations. I present here the figure one, which is a day within the planning horizon. It will be divided into multiple 30 minutes time periods starting from the beginning of the day until the end. Each time period represents a specific interval that can be assigned to employees for handling the customer calls. For workers, we have that each worker is assigned to one shift per day in the call center, and they are scheduled for a maximum of 5 days, 5 consecutive working days within a 7-day period. It is important to note that between two consecutive shifts, works must have a minimum break period of at least 11 hours. This is why this is to ensure that we have enough sufficient time, enough time to rest. So ensure sufficient rest time. The workforce is divided between two call centers, and it is also divided into teams based on the language proficiency and skill sets. Um, Here, the worker time preferences are considered during the scheduling, and we use to this purpose a kind of penalization system to manage deviations from these preferences. Therefore, the primary scheduling goal is to assign workers to teams and shifts by minimizing the total penalization associated with the workers' time preferences. Additionally, the schedule must ensure that workforce requirements for each time period are covered to meet customers' demand. So we have to ensure that the demand of the customers are satisfied. In this image, we can see a manual scheduling example. Currently, this company is doing this process manually using a spreadsheet, which is very consuming and inefficient. So this lack of automation leads many times to inconsistencies and inequalities in shift assignments, and therefore our need to an automated and efficient solution that motivates this work. Um, in terms of mathematical notation, I will not go deep into mathematical details. I only want to show you the defined set of teams that we have, denoted as K. The set of time periods is denoted as H, and the set of workers is denoted as W. And we have K, H, and W in lowercase are the indexes for the sets key, H, and W. In terms of parameters, we have K W, which represents the set of teams K to which a worker W can be assigned based on their required skill. And additionally, we have PH double, which stands for a penalization associated with the assigned worker W to a specific time period H. Finally, we have RKH, which denote the number of workers needed for a particular team during a specific age time period H. So in terms of mathematical formulation, is our objective is to assign workers to teams and shifts. To formulate a problem, a set of decision variables of type x, double, k, h is used to indicate if a worker is assigned to a certain to given team and to the shift starting at a given age. So it takes value one in affirmative case, zero otherwise. Again, I will not go deep into mathematical details, but here we can see that the objective function minimizes the total penalization when considering workers' preferences. Constraints of type 2 ensure that each worker cannot work more than 5 days per week. Constraints of type 3 ensure that each worker can only be in one shift per working day. Constraint 4 force the number of allocated workers at given shift in a given period of time and team to be at least equal to the demand, to the required worker force in the same period of time and team. And finally, constraints of type 5 establish that for each work, a mandatory break of at least 11 hours must exist between two consecutive shifts. To include workers' preferences and based on quantification of preference violations proposed by Barden Pronomo, we can see in this figure that we propose a scheme that the greater the difference between the workers' preference, and the time he or she prefers, the greater will be the penalty in the objective function. And this behavior, as we can see in this figure, will grow exponentially, as we can see. In terms of our computational test, we started by applying the LP linear programming relaxation techniques, where the integrality constraint is relaxed, allowing variables to take on non-integer values. And the important thing is this relaxation provides us with a lower bound denoted here as OPT frac on the optimal solution with the integer variables is denoted as OPT int. So the integrality gap of the LP relaxation is computed as the ratio between OPT int and OPT frac. So this metric, IG, quantifies the degree to which the relaxation deviates from the optimal integer solutions. For the computational experiments, we generated 55 random instances. Each one has a planning horizon of 31 days. We considered different scenarios with varying the number of works from 30 to 112. And we focus on instances with a single team. The workforce requirements and time preferences were randomly generated for each instance. This variation allows to explore different scenarios and evaluate effectiveness under diverse conditions. Additionally, in addition to the random instances, we also considered the three real data set of instances. In this case, with a planning horizon of either 28 days or 31 days, each with a specific number of workers and considering two to five teams with real data. The implementation was performed in IBM iLog CPLEX optimization, and in this table, we present a summary of the main result obtained. An important note here is, as we can see, a null integrality cap was obtained for all the instances, and in some of them, the LP relaxation allows non-integer variables. So we have a good approximation solutions, but indeed, the solution may turn out to be integer infeasible. To go further in our analysis, we used larger instances, more precisely randomly generated instances with a planning horizon of also 31 days, but a huge number of workers. The workforce and time preferences are also randomly generated. Even with a huge number of workers, we can see that the CPU time is lower than the one the company spends nowadays in this type of schedule. Just to give you some feedback, we show a schedule obtained manually and another one obtained by our model. I know it is difficult to catch the difference between them, even in these images, but the solutions tends to be more social and fair, and I can show you the best part is indeed an automatic solution. In conclusion, the aim of this work is to contribute with new approaches to automatic answers to the personal scheduling problem. How? Using a solution approach that relies on reset method. So here we use an integer programming model. We test the model and its linear relaxation using both random generated and real world instances. An important note for the null integrality gap that we reach for all instances, which show us that we are reaching a strong formulation and a good quality model for this problem. We also evaluate the model's performance with large instances with a huge number of workers, and we also get low CPU times. As a future work, we want to add more constraints and go more deep, such as days off incorporate breaks, interchanges between workers and other real-world constraints. Finally, applying this approach in organization is our objective to get some performance metrics in a real-world scenario. And here we have some references, and I'm available for your questions. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Telmo. I know you are available for questions, but we don't have time for questions because next session, 5:30, we will have to start. So thank
There's no
you.
problem.
For a very interesting work, and we also have the proceedings available in the first page of the web.
It's like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
One question?
No.
No.
Someone. It's like an emoji.
Tell me, you can get the proceedings in the web page of the ICCSA. So thank you all for attending the session. We have a next session in another room, but another session will be here. Yes. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Where is the link?
Oh, yes, I will send it to you. I don't know how, but you
Tu można nekąd wyrazy? Tak, musím najít někde. Jo, kam já to mám mrknout? Tady někam na plochu? Maybe zkusím, jestli to jde. Jo. Super. Okay, yeah, it's okay. It's possible. So if you wait a little bit, so
Eu fui para atualizar e ele diz que
I make this
não
one.
tem
Yeah,
nenhuma
okay.
atualização para fazer. O mail. Mas eu recebo os e-mails, acho eu. Eu também vou fazer
Okay, I'll send so I go to
You go to the stage.
And then I am going
You know the it's in the center of this. Yeah, I am going to
So I know that this is the paper. Okay, and I will the papers. That were in my session. Because I have another session now. I can do it in the end. Thank you very much, and I'm sorry for taking much time. Okay?
Thank you.
So yes, I am the chair of the
Okay.
session.
I am the technical.
Nice to see you. Hi.
You're very welcome. So I'm the chair. You
Yeah.
also present.
Yeah, I will present also the first paper. Ingrid will be the second, and we should have to another presentation online, but I'm not sure if this.
And in present in physical presence.
Yes, I think that one is for,
The
yes, the last one, and Clara Stella. Clara Stella, I don't know.
Yes, hi.
Hi. Do you have the presentation with the title Citizen Participation and so on?
Yes, I have the
Okay,
presentation.
perfect. Yeah, she's
Okay.
the lady that will have.
Okay.
Okay, so Hi everybody, my name is Katarina Vitališová and I'm from Slovakia, from Matthew Bell University. And today I will chair this session. We have 4 papers that were published in Proceedings also. I will start with my presentation and then there will be the paper from Ingrid Majerova from Czech Republic, and the next 2 papers should be
On the program, or you have the
I already printed.
Okay, okay.
But we lost the lady, probably.
It's not because of us.
Maybe it's her.
Left the meeting, so.
Or maybe.
Maybe she comes.
But
Maybe she has a problem with the connection.
Dear Francesco has the paper on the last paper, I think. But maybe we can start, and then if she will join us, she will.
Do you need the lights?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi.
I need to find my presentation. Okay.
Presentation?
Are we the last presenter?
Yes, we already give it here. Okay.
Are we the last presenter of this section?
Sorry.
No, unfortunately, the PowerPoint,
Are we the last
But
presenter?
I have also.
the PDF is better
Yeah,
because
I
it doesn't
also-
work
I think I have it.
But we can see it like we cannot share the screen.
No,
No,
I should
it's
have,
possible
don't
to
worry.
share the screen, but you see,
it
yeah.
was my mistake today. Not
I
this
think
one.
that the PDF
This one.
is always better.
Okay. Desktop. Okay, fine.
I just have to show
Sorry. That's okay. Do you have something?
I will ask.
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay.
Now it's showing.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much. Sorry. Sorry for my voice. I totally lost my voice last week, and now I try. I hope that I will be able to speak the whole presentation. So today I will present our research results of the project that were already implemented in Slovakia in Slovak cities. Probably you know that Slovakia is a relatively small country. We have just 5 million people, but we have quite unbalanced number of municipalities there, because even we have just 5 million people, we have almost 3,000 local municipalities and 8 regions. So it is quite a lot of. So, but you can imagine also that these municipalities are usually very small. So we try to investigate in our paper how is the level of implementation of smart governance in these cities. From the cities, we have 141 cities. The municipalities have to fill in some criteria to be a city in Slovakia. It is given by the law. So that's why they are announced by the government, and the total number is 141. So we did this research within the research project that were quite broad in scope, and for this paper I chose just a few of research results from this empirical research. We try to identify or to explain to you how impact the smart government, the urban development. We focus on the pros and cons, on some or benefits and pitfalls of smart governance, and based on this analysis, by using the factorial analysis, we identified the key factors which influence these effects. As I said, it is just selected research results from our research that was realized in 2021. We how to say it, the responses should be the whole Slovak cities, but the return of the responses was just around 50%, so it is 67 responses. And but I have to say that the research sample is representative by the size of test categories of the Slovak cities. So we can say that the research results can be used like some generalization of the situation. As I said, that we use also like a main tool the factorial analysis, but we use also some another basic descriptive statistics method, statistic induction. And based on them, we identify these benefits and pitfalls. Maybe what I can say that in the paper you will find a quite broad overview about the literature approaches to this topic. What is very important, I think, to say that smart governance it can be seen as a new approach to administration and to governing of the local municipalities, to cities and villages. And very important is that like a medium to realize it is new information technologies but it is not like the main idea use just these technologies, but these technologies should be used like a tool to make easier decision making, for example, to providing public services and so on. When we do the literature review, we identify a few papers that deals with the definition of benefits and pitfalls of smart governance at the national level, at the regional level, at the local level. So in this slide, you can see like that the benefits can be associated with the urban quality of life, with stakeholders' participation, with improving the governance processes. The pitfalls were usually associated with some kind of exclusion of stakeholders groups from the decision making because, for example, they are not able to use the new information technologies. That some kind of author says that, for example, citizens can be seen just like a unit of information, that they are something like a piece and they collected the information, just collect this data about them. And also there were some environmental issues that maybe it's a little bit extreme, but it was associated with a lot of technologies and techniques that can influence, for example, the environment, the situation, the wars, increase the temperatures and so on. So we collect all of them, and by this way we identify in the case of positive impacts 16 like potential influences that can bring the smart governance at the local level. In first round, we did also the research among the experts from academia and practice, and we give all these impacts, positive also negative, to evaluate them. If they think that they are real, how important or how serious they are, and so on, and then confirm that all of them they can be expected that happens in the reality. We published already the research outputs in previous paper last year. And in this stage, we give these positive impacts evaluated to the measures of the local municipalities in Slovakia. They evaluate each impact on the scale from I totally agree until this I'm fully not agree. And by this evaluation, we got some rates, and we use the Friedman test to give the importance of each impact. And you can see how was the final order of these positive benefits. that you can see that like first and most important, we're seeing the quality of life, improving services, strengthening citizen orientation to support transparency and so on. And like a next step to use somehow this data and to try to identify what are something like a main areas on which the impacts are focused or where the impact can be expected. We use the factorial analysis. And by this factorial analysis, we identify like 4 main factors which are positively influenced by the smart governance approach. Like the first one, and maybe the most important, is participation and the engagement of stakeholders. The second one, social welfare, it is oriented on providing higher added social and economic value, social inclusion, social justice. The third one was more effective services and public policies. So it should contribute, as I said, to changes in organizational structure, in processes, in effectiveness of policy decisions, and the last one, sustainability and resilience. We did the same in case of pitfalls or expected negative aspects, and by the literature was identified these 6 potential negative effects or obstacles in implementation of smart governance. Again, the respondents were asked to evaluate them on the scale from fully agree to no agree or disagree. And again, we use also the Friedman test to find the order, which are something like the most negative expected effect. It is the lack of capacity of local municipalities, or in this case, I can say it's obstacle that can influence the implementation. Then exclusion of some kind of stakeholders, and also to, for example, prioritization of technological innovation, negative aspects, and so on. We did again the same. We used the factorial analysis and like 2 main issues that should be solved if we want to be successful in smart governance implementation in case of cities. We should focus on the technology, but in this case, to be prepared for the technology innovation, to also learn and educate the stakeholders to learn them how to use this new technology way of participation. And the second one is like a second factor was evaluated e-participation, and it is oriented on the various use of technologies like a medium to support the decision making, and there can be some aspect that can be something like a negative if, for example, the older people are not able to use the new communication technologies, or it can be like, as I said, that people can be seen as a unit of information. Just to conclude my presentation, I can say that smart governance, if we want to say that some city is governed smartly, it should be do in systematically and integrated way. So they should be prepared for it. It means that there should be prepared the legislative framework. Also, there should be good technological equipment, the capacity, especially learning capacity of municipalities and people who work there should be at the adequate level to use the new technologies. Also, there should be prepared stakeholders to use these new forms of participation and local public life. And if they are prepared, they can be like to be successful in implementation, but still there can be some issues that should be solved. And maybe what is a limitation of our research is that we did this research in Slovakia, what is quite small country, and we have a specifically kind of structure of municipalities. But anyway, I can say that all Central European countries are very similar in sense of structure of local municipalities, and maybe the situation is very similar also there because they have a common history, a little bit common economic issue they solve and so on. So it can be also inspiration for all the Central European countries, and also generally I can say that also it can be inspiration also for the implementation of smart governments in smaller cities abroad, generally in other European countries, for example. And I also that we are continuing in the research. We try to focus more on open governance now, what is something like a next step in smart governance, because if governments have enough data, they should be use it smart and to make them open for the public. So thank you for your attention, and that was my presentation. And if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer. Nothing. Yeah.
Actually, it's not a question, but what is the next phase of your research? I mean, you did this objective information. So how are you going to get rid of this subjective opinion?
Okay, we did also the research of secondary data. It was like a combination. I just chose this because you have limited time and so on. But we have also the secondary research that we research what is the reality in the Slovak cities, and I can say that even a lot of these municipalities, they think they are very smart and so on. Usually they are not, and I don't know, but if you know, but there is some kind of classification of smart governance concept, how they are implemented, and to be the real smart governed, it means that you totally change the structure, the way of thinking, and so on. And on this level is no city in Slovakia currently. I think usually like a first level is to use this concept of smart governance like a marketing for the cities, that we want to smart, we have some special website, we have some kind of tools that we use like to be smart, but that it's usually just something like a first step or something like a first stage, you can move that. And in this stage, I can say that there are some cities, and maybe some of them they move to changes in procedures and in processes, but usually they are the biggest cities in Slovakia. And but biggest cities is not like, for example, in Athens, but the biggest cities is Bratislava, what has 1 million people, inhabitants. 5 million people we have. Yeah. So we try to compare these research results, and we find out that the reality is a little bit different. But anyway, for us, what was very important and interesting to find out how they see this concept, because I know that a lot of these smaller municipalities, they have quite big problem to survive, even because they don't have enough money, they don't have enough employees, especially skilled employees like IT specialists and so on. And also this research showed that these bigger cities, they are like involved in this movement and they want to do something. But the smaller one, if they want, they have to associate with some other municipalities usually, or they do it alone, and it is not so effective.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So if you don't have question, I will welcome our next speaker. It's Ingrid. I will choose. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So. No.
Potrebuję PDF.
PDF-ko, aha, okay. Skip sign it for now.
Może to nie pójdzie puścić.
This one, okay. Yes. This one. It is okay or not?
Yes, it's not possible to put the.
Aha, okay. So how can I solve it?
To convert it there?
PDF, I'll try.
No, it is. Yeah, you can try. Okay, yeah. PDF. Yeah.
Maybe you can put your name.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But not in the notes in the desktop.
No, yeah, I know.
Yeah, oh, sorry. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So we can take from there. I thought that we didn't have the availability of making those transitions.
I think it's okay.
Perfect.
It's okay.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, good. Okay. So sorry for this inconvenience. So let me introduce myself again. So as the chair of the session said, my name is Ingrid Majerova, and I came from the Czech Republic, so the ex core country of Slovakia, we can say. So before the 1993, we were together. So one republic, Czechoslovakia, Slovak Republic, Federative Republic, it doesn't matter what. And my presentation is about the using of some custom management systems for the creating of websites of municipalities in our region. So our country is a little bit bigger than the Slovak Republic, twice more we can say, so 10 million people, a lot of municipalities, about 6,000 municipalities, and the Moravian Silesian region is the border region with the Slovak and Polish Republic, and it is the ex coal mine region, we can say, because the the heavy industry was the main industry in the past. Nowadays, we make still restructurization, and of course, it hits our life conditions, everything, not only that one. So the main idea of my presentation, so the paper was done with my colleague of informatics department, Radim Dolak, and we tried to investigate how the websites of various municipalities in our region are done, and if it is any connection with the type of this so-called CMS, so content management system. So because of course, the main idea was done on the background, another one, that we, or the good governance or e-governance should be good when it is in connection with the people. And nowadays, this connection is, of course, about the internet, about the website, about the e-informations. And of course, these municipalities have to done something about that. So of course, it is obliged to have some websites for the municipalities in the Czech Republic and inform their citizens about everything. It is very important to choose properly this CMS, because this choice is dependent on the effectivity of these websites. So of course we tried to, as I said, ascertain to the type of CMS, and the second aim was if these type of CMS are connected with the size of municipality, because some of them are free of charge, some of them have to be paid. So we follow how to say, the common rules, not rules, the common things in that area from abroad, because the main used CMS are very known: WordPress, Joomla, Drupal. These three ones are around us. It means in Germany or in France, very often used in US, in Sweden, so on, Norwegian. And we wanted to know if it is true in our region as well. So that's why we said two questions. Yeah, the first one was if we, or not we, but our municipalities use open source, so-called or open source CMS. It means WordPress or this Drupal, and if these use, as I said, is dependent on the size of municipalities. Why we did this research? It was not only because we have a project about these things. It was because of two things. To clarify if the municipalities in our region are using the common open source management systems, and if the financial conditions, because as Katarina said, the financial side is very harsh limitation for the municipalities. If this size of municipalities depends on this CMS, because of course we can suppose that the municipalities will use the open source system because of money. Yeah, it is free of charge. Only some small fees have to be paid if you want to do something more. But normally it is so that we have no money as municipalities. We don't use the custom systems that should be paid. Okay? So to support our idea, we made, of course, some literature review. I don't use it here in my presentation because it is too long and too boring, I think. I have chosen only one table. It is table about the most used CMS in selected countries, and as I said, you can see various of them. So WordPress, Joomla, Drupal, and the others, yeah, they are used. In Germany, for example, 19% of municipalities used the CMS Typo 3, so it is special German system. In Hungary, they used WordPress. In Italy, for example, more than half of municipalities use the Joomla. In UK, they have a special, again, custom system called Jadu. So you can see that the using of them is various and surprising. In Italy is very often the Joomla system. So to explain which area was chosen, you can see on the map. In the corner is the whole Czech Republic, and the Silesian region is there. It is divided into 6 districts, we can say, big districts, and we have about 300, 300 municipalities, exactly. So we, of course, investigated all of them because we had to go to the websites, find out which system they use, and then make another steps of research. So for that reason, we divided the municipalities according to their size. You can see this division in that table. So we have small municipalities till 500 citizens. It is about 70 the number. Then rural, so-called rural municipalities, it is according to law, this division, 2 or 3,000 citizens, it is about 170. Then cities, so till 30,000. So there are 53 statutory cities. There are 5, and just 70,000, and one regional capital, which is Ostrava, is only one, of course. Yeah. So how we can find out the proper or the direct CMS in the website. So they are written mostly in the bottom of the website. So you can see the arrows. So you can find the type of CMS there. So we did it for all of municipalities in our region, and this is the result. So we can see that most of them use so-called GCM, and it is the special custom system from the firm Galileo. This is the main, I think, provider of websites in Slovakia as well. So because we did another research and we found out that Galileo is very popular in Slovak. Then Wismo system, it is the firm Wismo, and IPO, and this is from the INT firm. So you can see the market share. So mostly half of them, they use this Galileo, then 13% Wismo, and mostly 12% this IPO. Only, of course, we wanted to know how many municipalities use this most worldwide system as WordPress and Joomla, and it was interesting that only 3% and about 3% of them, so 10 and 8 municipalities use this WordPress and Joomla. So we can say that at the first sight, it is so that the municipalities don't use these open source systems for the creation of their websites. They use the special ones. Yeah? And when we divide these systems according to the size of municipalities, so these small municipalities, rural municipalities, cities, and statutory cities, we can see that it is very interesting that most of rural municipalities, so it means to 3,000 citizens, use this GMS, it means Galileo. Then WordPress is used only by the 5 rural municipalities, and Joomla by 4. What is interesting is that the WordPress is used by the statutory cities in one case, and Wismo in another one, and 3 of them, so more than half, they use other systems. So they have their special custom systems. They are used in that municipalities. When we this visualization, because it is better to see in the figures or pictures, and you can see which kind of these systems are used by the various size municipalities according their largeness. So small municipalities mostly use this GMS. And rural municipalities. So mostly half of small municipalities used the custom system, Galileo, as well as rural municipalities. And when we go further, according to the size, bigger and bigger city or municipality, it means that they don't use, for example, in the case of statutory city, any Galileo or something like this. These most popular systems, they have mostly the systems, they are called as others, so really customized systems. So it means that according to their size, the using of this system is changed. From the, how to say, common system in the Czech Republic to very specialized system. They are made really on the skin or on the purposes of these cities. Yeah. Okay. So the question or answer to the first question, if the municipalities in the Czech this region of Czech Republic, because we investigated it only in the Moravian Silesian region, if they use this system as the other municipalities abroad. So it is no, because we have our own, we can say, Czech and Slovak systems, and if it is depending on the size of municipalities, we can say that it is yes, because the municipalities don't use mostly the open sources or free of charge systems, and they have their common. But if they are bigger and larger, they use more and more how to say specified systems. Yeah, so they are made really for their purposes. They are not general as Galileo or ISMO, and they are really made only for that cities. It is about the statutory cities and about the capital of our region. So that's the result. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your presentation. Maybe we will have some questions. I have one.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Why the cities don't use this free system for the pages? I think that because it doesn't suit for the Czech conditions. I think so. Yeah, because they are worldwide and they are mostly used by the other types of municipalities, and they wanted to, or want, not wanted, but they want to have their special systems, yeah, and maybe, but it is only the unofficial idea. They want to give the money for the providers of these systems, yeah, because this how to say this collaboration is very thin, and I think so that they want to pay for that, because
you said that this capital system is used by almost all small municipalities. And do you know how is the price?
It depends. It depends if you have the only the, how to say, the basic package, or if you have some another things. But it is not very expensive. Yeah, it isn't. Yeah, I think that the services are free if you choose this system, and mostly it is because I think maybe it is the reason, because when you buy this system, every upload and every other how to say other upgrades you can do yourself. So not yourself, but every municipality has its IT department, or somebody who cares about these IT things, and it is possible to do them themselves. Yeah, so maybe that's the reason they don't have to call to somewhere and ask. Yeah, if they need something, so they do in that system. But I know that it is sometimes it is combination, because the websites mostly are in that systems. But when you add some another e-informations or e-participation for the citizen, for example, we made some project for our Karviná city, so it is one of these 5 statutory cities, and we did some waste management or e-waste management, so that people can find various type of containers in various streets when you want to get iron or glass or something like this, paper and so. And we developed some app for that, but this app is not in this e-Galileo or Vismo, it is in Joomla. Yeah, because it is free of charge, and they don't have to pay for that, and they add to their websites. Yeah, so if you want to find some container, so please click here. So they click, and this Joomla is open, and it is so it is combination. But we don't wanted to know how to say another supports are made, but only this website. So nothing else. Yeah, so
Thank you.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
I will check who from the online presenters is. We're supposed to have two.
Yes,
Yeah.
but we have just one.
And the other one is a Greek.
Yeah,
as
so
far as I see, the third one.
mhm.
So we have to skip. And we
Yes,
have to
yes, and we
follow.
will
And
follow.
give me a second to check
Okay.
what's going on.
So we will go by this
Yes.
presentation and maybe then the last. Okay. So Pier Francesco, are you able to have a presentation a little bit earlier?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So the floor is yours.
Hey all, I will can you share the screen, please?
Okay. Sì, allora questo lo devo staccare. No, questo ok. Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. I'm Vincenza Torrisi, but I've got the pleasure to introduce the joint work realized with the University of Catania and University with two different departments about the multi-level perspective within the regulatory framework of shared mobility. And we apply a case studies analysis of Italian demand responsive to shared transport services. I've got the pleasure to introduce Pier Francesco Leonardi and Roberta Campolo, two of my colleagues that will tell us about our work. And this is the results of national project called Wikitransit, which is based on the development of on-demand shared transport services. And in particular, in this research, we focus on the regulatory framework for its implementation. So Pier Francesco will give a brief introduction and will focus on the methodological approach, while Roberta Campolo will focus on several case studies that we analyze and will present the results and discussion about the results. So I give the floor to them, and it's my pleasure to hear them.
Shared mobility service allow to favor the use of local public transport and to discourage the use of private cars. These on-demand services differ from the traditional ones due to their integration with the digital platform, which is essential to use this kind of service. The platform is useful both the user that to provide clear information about the service, giving a better quality perception and at the same time to the operator to optimize the service and to try to satisfy a greater number of users' requests. Sharing mobility services can be grouped into categories. Vehicle sharing, where only the vehicle is shared, and ride sharing, where the users share both the vehicle and the trip. Among these one, there are the DRT microtransit services. California state's legislature defines microtransit as it enables multi-passenger transportation service that serve passengers using dynamically generated routes and may expect passengers to make their way and from common pick-up and drop-off point. The implementation of this service should require a specific regulation to define the operational features linked to the service. Moreover, it's always to avoid the DRTS contrast or overlap with public transport services. Therefore, this paper proposes a multi-level perspective methodology in order to provide a legal linked to the introduction and the implementation of DRTS, mainly due to regulatory shortcomings. The adopted methodological approach is characterized by the identification of 4 questions choosily related to the implementation of the DRTS services. The identification of these questions is linked to operational features of these services, and in some cases as pilot projects, considering the Italian national context. The first question investigates the need to have a specific legislative tools for this service, analyzing the national and regional legislation. The second question concerns the type of the operator that can provide the service. The third question concerns the territorial context and the type of the service provided to users. And the fourth question relates to the possibility of obtaining an economical contribution for the service and the methodology for quantifying the provided service in kilometers or equivalent meters.
All the case studies analyzed will refer to a national regulation, Legislative Decree number 422, which identifies the possibilities to implement particular transport scheduled services in specific weak demand areas. It provides the definition of weak demand areas and the service types. 4 different case studies have been selected: the region of Piemonte, the region of Valle d'Aosta, the region of Lombardia, and the region of Friuli-Venezia Giulia, which have implemented flexible on-demand transport services with different characteristics within a regional regulatory framework different from each other. As regards the first case study, the service contract in the metropolitan area identified the on-demand services as a service with flexible or fixed routes and timetables and the need of a reservation. Small vehicles can be used, car, van, minibus, or minibus. It is associated a value of 1.40 euros for vehicle per kilometer, while the distance traveled have been calculated on the basis of a predefined kilometer matrix, considering the sum of the traveled link along the entire itinerary of each trip. A few of 18 hours also been provided for the booking management platform. As for the second case study, according to the law, the purpose of demand service is to meet the mobility needs in area with low demand during the day, for example, in the evening, in addition to scheduled services. The Regional Council is authorized to stipulate special agreements with the concessionary companies of scheduled services and with MSCO taxes. The law defines the cost of the service on the basis of a kilometer or hourly fee. The Regional Council establishes the criteria for the performance services and defines the possible contribution of the region. The rates are those of the scheduled service, but remodulated on the basis of the characteristic of the service, for example, the frequency. For the third case study, the guidelines for local public transport propose 2 operating models for the creation of demand service, with the fixed routes made only by reservation, with the flexible routes made only by reservation, with the 2 commonly used models, the many-to-one model and the many-to-many model. The coordination guidelines for the assignment for the local public transport define the conversion of on-demand services into equivalent distance. Finally, for the fourth case study, the flexible services are defined as on-demand services performed under low demand areas
and times of low traffic, with fixed or flexible routes, and with the use of technologies. Low demand areas are defined by the regional local public transport plan. The report identifies various types of flexible service. The first type of service is defined as improvement. This type of service is to improve the quality of the service. The second type of the service is defined as an extension. It is provides in areas not yet served, improving existing connection. The third and the fourth type are referred to municipalities characterized by partial situation of low demand, by replacing existing service or new services.
It can be seen that in all of four cases, the regional law represents the legal basis for the establishment of the service, because it includes the flexible on-demand service among the local public transport services. Here, I show that some regions have guidelines or plans of local public transport. But in all cases, the service is activated through a contract or agreement. This depends on indication within the regulation or guidelines. This study showed how clear and defined legislation can help the implementation of DRTS services. The methodological approach always identify the service parameters such as type of degree and flexibility. It is necessary to establish a methodology for quantifying the service and performance so as to able to assign an economical contribution. Several case studies has been analyzed, and in particular case, in the case of Lombardia and Friuli, the active service have attracted several users. Future research will focus on identifying the regulator tools to be adopted to promote the sustainable development of innovative service on demand. These regulatory instruments will ensure to continuous service with quality standards helpful for attracting new users. Thanks for the attention.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Do we have some questions for you? Nothing special? Maybe I have one question, but it's not totally associated with your presentation. But how it is about these new kinds of mobile vehicles in your case? Because, for example, in Slovakia, where I live, if they decide to introduce, for example, bolt sharing bikes or this kind of different modes, they are just approved by the local municipality, but not by the regional government. So how it is regulated in your country?
Can you hear me?
Sì, si deve abbassare poco.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now, yes.
Can you hear me? Yes. So your question is about how we do the regulation in our country to perform this kind of services.
Yes.
For us, it's a problem that our research framework focus on this aspect because some regions have their regional laws, and so they can perform this kind of services easily, and not like just experimentation or just a pilot project that will end because there are no contribution by the regions, but they can realize a service that can last like the two last case studies that Pietro just mentioned before. While in other contexts, not having a specific regulation not allowed to perform this kind of services because sometimes it can happen that it can become in contracts with the local public transport. while this kind of services have to work like a feeder in order to improve the use of a public transport, in order to increase accessibility to local public transport and to discourage the use of private car, especially in weak demand areas where there are more public transport services. So we are working in this direction in order to try to found a methodological approach to implement this kind of services that is a service between local public transport and the traditional taxi or rent a car without driver. Just to, I don't know if I answered your question, but I try to explain better our
Anyway,
work.
Yeah, good luck in your research. It's quite challenging, I think. So keep fingers for you. No other
Yes.
questions? We don't have another questions. So thank you very much again for your presentation. And
Thank you very much.
There are some, but we don't have another presenter. Probably they will not join us. So I would like to thank you very much for this session. It was a little bit shorter, but I think it's quite time to have a rest. Yes, exactly. So thank you very much again, and we will see tomorrow for the next session.
The room is closed, yes? And then, so I just put myself out.
Okay, take your time. Don't worry.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. So we have to leave it open until what is it? But this is nice. Just maybe 5 Yes. Right. So the so I need you to send your link in order to evaluate the audios. So this is the link. Yes, you can send it online. So that's ready. Και τώρα τελείωσε το session της σήμερα και ήθελα εχθές να περάσω χρήσιμο να σας ευχαριστώ. Αλλά δεν το θες πρόγραμμα που μπορεί να ξεπερνώ. Δεν ξέρω. Και κάτι άλλο αύριο. Υπάρχει περίπτωση να έχουμε τις δύο ή μια μισή. Δηλαδή να μας το διάλογο με στα κανάλια. Thank you.
answers, and it takes time. Yes. Yeah. Maria. Maria. But needs our goal. Thank you very much. See you. Bye. Bye.
Είσαι προβληματισμό.
Έχεις δίκιο.
Ναι,
Βλακεία τώρα.
ναι, αλλιώς δεν θα έχει νόημα.
Μάλιστα, αλλά δεν είναι έτσι.
Καλά, με το δώσω σου και θα αρχίσω και εγώ σιγά σιγά να φέρνω.
So do we need to close?
Okay.